And thank you for joining. My name is Karen, and I'm an account relationship manager at the British Council Abu Dhabi. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the IELTS test and how it opens doors to opportunities worldwide. Now, at any point of time during the presentation, if you're not able to hear me or you're not able to see my slides switch, then please do let me know. I'm going to move on to the next slide, and this is just, the title of the session, which is an IELTS information session, where we're going to be talking to you about what is the IELTS test, why should you choose the IELTS test, structure and contents of the test, and how can the British Council help you in terms of your preparation or to help you to achieve your desired score along with free preparation material. Now, what is the IELTS and why should you choose IELTS? I do hope that you can see my screen switching. I hope you can see my slide now, which is talking about what is the IELTS. In case not, feel free to unmute yourself and let me know. Now, of course, we all know that the IELTS is an English language test. What it stands for, IELTS, is International English Language Testing System. And it is a global standardized English language proficiency test. It is secure, valid, and reliable as an indicator of the test taker's proficiency in English. And the main purpose that it is used is that it is globally recognized as one of the world's leading English language proficiency tests. And if you look at the next slide, these are the three main purposes why anybody would want to take the IELTS. So it depends on your current stage in life, your purpose, what you're looking at achieving, whether they are academic goals or whether they are professional goals or simply personal development. So there are three broad reasons or three broad categories and purposes of taking the IELTS test. Number one is higher education. So if you're looking at studying abroad or in the UAE at an international university or even a local university, you will be asked for your IELTS test score, your IELTS academic test score. And this is basically for all courses that are delivered in English. Number two is for your career. So if you're looking at progressing in your career progression, employability, enhancing your employability skills, all of that, the IELTS test basically helps you to achieve what you desire in terms of your academic and career goals. Now, last but not the least, and which is one of the main reasons why people take the IELTS test, is for immigration. So if you're looking at studying or working or living generally in a country where English is the means of communication, you will be required to submit your IELTS test score as part of your immigration application. Moving on, in terms of global recognition and acceptance, we have over 10,000 organizations in 140 countries across the globe that actually recognize the test and accept the test officially. Yeah. Unofficially, of course, this number is huge, but we have on record, official record, we have close to 1,600 plus testing locations worldwide, including over 50 locations in the US. So often we get the question as to whether or not the IELTS test is recognized by the US as a country or US institutions, educational institutions, academic bodies. And the answer is yes, because officially on record, we have over 3,400 institutions that recognize the test in the US. All universities in UK, Australia, New Zealand recognize the test officially. Immigration authorities in all of these countries that you can see on the bottom left of my screen, that is Canada, Australia, New Zealand, US, UK, recognize the test. Top employers, whether it's in the UAE or abroad, professional registration bodies and government entities also recognize the test. So if you are a student that is looking at apologies, but I think somebody has forgotten to mute their mics. We can hear you. Please do mute your mic. So as I said, if you're a student that's looking at applying to university or a college abroad or in the UAE, a good recognized established institution, or even if you are a working professional that is looking at furthering yourself in your career, progressing in your career, maybe you are applying to, you're at a stage in your life where you're applying to a scholarship program as a student, or even if you are, simply taking it for the purpose of immigration to live and work in another country abroad where English is the medium of, is the language or the mode of communication, then yes, you would be required to submit your IELTS test score. Now, we've had more than 3.5 million test takers in the past year. As you can see, the red dots on my screen go to, depict the massive scale of our presence across the globe. And these figures, of course, are increasing as the years go by. This screen or this slide is very, very important because this is where we actually talk about the different delivery modes, the delivery versions, the results. Now, you can choose to take your IELTS test on paper or you can choose to take it on computer. It's totally a matter of personal choice and preference. It is up to you, whichever you feel more comfortable with. You can basically, of course, there is a price difference. The IELTS on computer is slightly more expensive than the IELTS on paper. And the test dates are fixed for IELTS on paper. The test time is also fixed. You will always take it on a Saturday morning, early in the morning. Your registration time will start approximately at 8 a.m. But if you're taking the computer delivered IELTS, you have a lot of benefits, not just the user interface, not just the fact that, typing speed is usually faster than writing. You don't have to worry about handwriting. You don't have to worry about results because your results are available quicker. There are loads of benefits in taking the computer delivered IELTS test, but the biggest or the maximum benefit that you can gain is from the flexibility in terms of the available test dates and test times. So in computer delivered, it's not fixed. Unlike the paper-based IELTS test, in computer delivered, you can choose to take your test in the morning. You can choose to take it in the PM1 session, which is early afternoon, or the PM2 session, which is evening at 5. Now, with regards to your results, your computer-delivered IELTS test results are available 3 to 5 days after your test date. Your paper-based IELTS test results are available 13 days after your test date. Once you take the test and once you get your result is valid for a period of 2 years. So you can accordingly take your test depending on your needs or your purpose or, how soon or how late you require the result, and if you want to use it for multiple purposes. Now, the best part about taking the IELTS test in advance or earlier, we always say the earlier the better. The reason being, you can always retake the test multiple times in order to better your score. Now, we have two versions of the test, as you may know. One is academic and one is general training. The academic version of the test is basically for students or for anyone who is taking the test for the purpose of education. It could be for an undergrad, it could be for a postgrad, it could be for a vocational kind of a course, it could be for a GDBA, a graduate diploma, it could be any of those, but for academic purposes. Now, if you are taking it for the purpose of immigration, then you would be required to take the general training type of course. However, if you are taking it for the purpose of work or for career, it depends on the nature of your job and it depends on your organization that you are applying to or the organization that you are submitting the score to as to which IELTS they require. Because, if you are a nurse or you are a teacher, it is likely that the receiving organization or your employer would like to see an IELTS academic. However, if the nature of your work is generic, then you might be required to take a general training. So what you need to do is check with the receiving organization as to which test type they require. And of course, in academic also you have paper-based and computer delivered, and in general training also you have paper-based and computer delivered. So that's totally up to you, your format of preference. Now, your speaking test is always held face to face with an examiner. This can be in person at a venue, or it can be virtually through a video call, but at a venue. So it basically goes to add that human element to the test, where you are face to face with a person and he or she is assessing your ability to speak in the English language. Now, moving on, structure and contents of the test. Just to remind you, in case you have any questions, we will be taking all of your questions at the end. So do jot them down, write them down, or feel free to leave them in the chat box. And I will take a look at them in the last 15 minutes of the presentation. Now, you may already be aware that in the IELTS test, you are assessed on 4 skills. You have your listening, your reading, your writing, and your speaking. Your listening, reading, writing are always held on the same day, one after the other. But your speaking, you can opt for it to be before or after the listening, reading, writing on the same day, or you have the flexibility to request for it to be 1 week prior or 1 week after the listening, reading, writing test day. Now, each of us have different, strengths and weaknesses. So we need to be aware of that. We need to be consciously aware of that so that we can spend more time practicing what we find challenging. For example, you may be very fluent in your listening and speaking because you're using it on a day-to-day basis in your workplace or in your school, in your classroom. However, maybe you feel that reading is a challenge because of the time constraint and you read slowly maybe. And writing is a challenge because you're not sure how to articulate yourself. Maybe your spellings are correct, but when you have to write an essay, you do not structure the essay properly. So all of this requires a lot of time and practice. The Filipino Institute has a lot of courses specifically that can help you with this. So do sign up to any of these, find out, and they will tell you what are the courses they offer. There's a lot of support that is available, not just through the British Council, but through the Filipino Institute. And the more you practice, the better, because, the more you practice, the better the score always. So moving on, this is what the test format looks like. So you have the listening and the speaking is the same, irrespective of whether you're taking the academic or the general training version of the test. It's identical. So you have listening 30 minutes, you have 4 sections or parts, and you have 40 items or 40 questions. Now, in your speaking duration is 11 to 14 minutes. That's the duration of the speaking component, and you have 3 parts. So as I said, academic and general training, it's the identical test for listening and speaking. However, the main difference comes in the reading and the writing, and that too only in the content of the reading and the writing. So the nature of what you read in the reading comprehension and the nature of the writing task will differ. If it's academic, it'll be a different task, more academic in nature in terms of content. And if it's general, it'll be, of course, more generic. You'll have like a letter in the writing and more generic content in the reading. The duration of the reading and the writing is identical. You can see it's 60 minutes each for both academic and for general training. The sections or the number of sections is identical. You have 3 sections for the reading, 2 tasks for the writing, and 40 questions each in the reading. So not to worry too much about this. It is useful information to know because, that helps you in your preparation. It helps you in managing time. It helps, you to be aware of it, especially when you are doing your practice and timing yourself when you answer. Now, we're going to look at how are the different skills assessed, or what are the key aspects in terms of assessment criteria on a generic, more of an overall broad view. So listening and reading, you will see my slides are identical. If I switch slides, you'll see that it looks like the same slide. So for the listening and the reading, you have 40 questions each. You are going to be penalized for poor spelling and grammar. So you need to make sure you get that correct, get that right. and you do not lose marks for wrong answer. There is no negative marking, so you should always try and answer each of the questions. Now, this is the generic assessment criteria. But after you book your test with the Filipino Institute, we deliver what is known as a tips and tricks techniques session. Tips and techniques session is what it is called. But we talk about common errors. We talk about the assessment criteria in detail. We talk about what you can expect in terms of sample questions, in terms of timing, and a lot more. So that session is extremely useful, and it is delivered to you for free because you are registering through Filipino Institute. So this is very important that you keep in mind. Do register for a tips and techniques session. As soon as you book your test, inform us that you would like to attend a tips and techniques session. We have a number of different types of tips and techniques sessions that are available for you, and you can have that benefit of attending them. So we've covered the listening and the reading. Of course, we know that you can listen to English, we know that you can read English, but what we are really assessing in these two sections is your ability to grasp what you listen to in the first instance, because the recording is played only once. So that's for the listening. For the reading, what we're assessing is, of course, we know that you can read English, but what we're assessing is your ability to grasp what you read in the first instance. So that's what's assessed in the IELTS reading section in concise or in summary. Now, the writing is assessed slightly differently. So as you can see here, number one, you're assessed on task achievement or response. So whether or not you've answered the question and the different parts of the question. If you have answered, if you've written a beautiful piece, with excellent vocabulary and grammar, if you've written all of the, you've met the word limit, but you haven't really answered if the question has 4 parts and you've answered only 1 or 2 parts, or even 3 parts and you've forgotten about the 4th part, then you have not met this criteria. So task achievement and response is very important. The second is lexical resource, which is just this, a fancy way of saying vocabulary. So your flair for the language, the different words that you use, not repeating the same word over and over again, but using synonyms, is something that is very much appreciated, and you will get a good score. The third aspect is how logical you are, how consistent you are, how your thoughts come together, and then how you put your thoughts together in the form of a written piece. So coherence and cohesion is what this is, termed as, and it's basically whether or not you are making sense when all your thoughts come together, whether it is logical, whether it is consistent, and whether you are following a structure. Yeah, that is also very important. Last but not the least, of course, it's a language test. So grammatical range and accuracy also matters. You need to be very careful in terms of your tenses, past, present, future, your spelling, your prepositions, your singular, plural, capitalization of nouns. All of that is very, very important, including sentence structure. Moving on to the last skill, here again, this is slightly different, which is speaking skills. Here you are assessed on number 1, your fluency and coherence. Yeah. Number 2, your lexical resource, which I said was vocabulary. Number 3, your grammatical range and accuracy, which I explained on the previous slide. And number 4, your pronunciation. And of course, because this is the speaking test, maximum focus is on your pronunciation and your fluency and coherence. Now, if you are Filipino, or if you are Arab, or if you are Indian, or if you are French, you may have an inbuilt default, native speaker accent when you are speaking in English, which is totally fine. However, you should not change the meaning of the word. So your pronunciation should be accurate. You are not going to be given extra marks, if you speak in an American accent or a British accent. We do not give extra marks for that. You are not penalized if you have, a heavy Arabic accent, for example. However, if you change the meaning of the words, like, for example, because you have a heavy Arabic accent, if you use words like, if you replace your P with your B, if you're saying pen and you say ben, which is a common error with Arabic native speakers, that of course you are penalized for. But otherwise, no, you can feel free to use your native accent as long as your pronunciation is accurate and good. Moving on, there is no pass or fail in the IELTS test. You get a 0 only if you have not attempted the test. Otherwise, you are classified on a band scale. It's a 9-band scale, all the way from non-user, which is 1, right up to 9, which is expert user. So 9 is the highest, of course, 1 is the least. Now, you don't have to read all of this. I'm not going to read it to you, but of course, you have to keep it at the back of your mind. Subconsciously, you should always aim for the highest band score, because the higher, the better. Do not, a lot of candidates make the mistake of thinking, okay, I need a minimum of 5 for this particular purpose, or I need a minimum of 7 for this particular purpose, and then they work towards the 7. But that is not what we recommend. What we recommend is always aim for a 9. I'm not saying you're going to be able to achieve it, but you will land, you will be able to deliver to the highest of your potential. So that is something that you should keep in mind. Don't worry too much about the minimum, but aim for the maximum. Now, your IELTS test score is always in whole or half band. So you can always expect a 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, but you're never going to get a 5.25 or a 5.75, like a quarter band. So it's always whole or half bands. And you will get a separate band for listening, for reading, for writing, and for speaking. And then you will get an overall band score, which is an average of these 4 bands. So basis that, you are going to be classified as a basic user, an independent user, or a proficient user, as you can see on screen. Moving on, we're going to take a broad overview. We are already at 5:30. So, we have about 15 minutes, and then we have 15 minutes for a Q&A. So I'm going to, run through this, but I can assure you that once you book your test, what you need right now in this session is a broad overview of the 4 skills, which I'm going to cover now in this session. But once you book your test and you sign up for a tips and techniques session or for one of our workshops, such as the IELTS Ready workshop or the IELTS Advantage workshop, in each of these, we cover each of these skills in far more detail. We talk about question types, we talk about sample questions, we talk about common errors, a lot more that you can benefit from. Now, a broad overview of the listening sections, as you can see from this slide, you have 4 subsections. In all of this, you're going to be listening to an audio recording. You're going to be listening to a conversation. But how it differs in each section is the number of speakers and the nature of content. That's the only 2 aspects that differ. Of course, each section increases in the level of challenge. So section 1 is the easiest. Section 4 is the most challenging. Now, in terms of, I told you there are only 2 differences in each of the sections, and that is in terms of the number of speakers and the nature of content. So number of speakers in section 1 is 2 speakers. The context is an everyday social context or a generic context, something like a conversation that you hear through a call center or at the bank. And again, you will see there are 2 speakers in section 3. But over here, the conversational context varies. It's not a generic context, it's an academic context. So maybe a conversation taking place at a school between a teacher or a lecturer and a group of students. In section 2 and section 4, there is only 1 speaker in each of these sections. It's a monologue or a lecture, a one-way conversation, like listening to a speech or a podcast. Now, the context varies because in section 2, you have a generic social context, and in section 4, you have a general academic context. So an example of section 2 would be a TED Talk, for example. Yeah, that's on a topic of general social needs. You have 1 speaker addressing an audience. In section 4, a perfect example of this would be a lecture in a school. So that's what you can expect in the overall listening. And of course, the audio recording will play only once. Yeah, that's a must to remember, because you need to be very careful to grasp what you listen to in the first instance, to answer the questions. Now, moving on to the reading. The reading is 60 minutes in total. You have 40 questions that you need to answer in those 60 minutes or in that 1 hour. You have 3 sections, and as you can see from the bottom of my screen, these are varying in terms of the number of texts and in terms of the content. So it's like a comprehension. In the academic version of the test, you will have academic content. In the general version of the test, you will have a generic social content. Yeah. Now, you could expect text from magazines, from journals, from newspapers, from maybe a textbook, from a scholarly article. It could be anything. In section 1, there are generally 2 to 3 texts. In section 2, it's generally 2 texts. And in section 3, it is 1 text, but that text will be longer than the text in section 1 and section 2, because it goes to basically test your general extended reading comprehension. So you need to be careful about what to expect. You need to read a lot, and you need to be very, very careful in terms of timing. That is the main thing when you come to the reading, because you need to be able to grasp what you read in the first instance. That's not just that. You need to be consciously aware of the rapid reading techniques. So, photo reading techniques, skimming and scanning techniques, all of these are all of these are really helpful. So you can Google them, and they will help you to achieve or to read that many number of words in that limited span of time, which is 60 minutes. So in 60 minutes, you not only have to read that text, but you need to answer the questions as well. And there are techniques that we cover in the tips and techniques session that will help you achieve that. Moving on to the writing you have 2 tasks. Yeah, you have the letter if you're taking general training, or you have to write an essay or a report on a graph. Now, when I say graph, it could be any kind of pictorial illustration. It could be a pie chart. It could be a graph. It could be a bubble graph. It could be even, just a process or a pictorial illustration of, say, the process of making chocolate in a factory. So it could be anything, a pictorial illustration, and you need to write or explain what you can see in that image. You need to provide the information, all of the information that you can visually see in that image, and explain a situation. You need to write at least 150 words. This is even if it is the letter. What I forgot to mention is that the letter can be formal, it can be informal, it can be semi-formal. There are different formats for that. There is a different structure, a different type of language that you use for each of those formats, and that is for general training. Now, you need to write at least 150 words for task 1 and at least 250 words for task 2, which I'm going to cover what is the content of task 2. But because of that, we tell you to divide your time appropriately. So the 60 minutes in total that you have for the writing section, you can start with task 2, 40 minutes, and then move on to task 1, which is 20 minutes, because you need to write more words for task 2 and it is worth more marks. Now, what do you expect in task 2? In task 2, you are going to be faced with an essay. So you'll be asked to write an essay. This could be a discursive essay. It could be explaining the pros and cons of, something like, for example, explain the advantages and disadvantages of globalization, for example. It could be discussing 2 sides of a coin, maybe talking about pollution or congestion in metropolitan cities, for example. There are a number of essays that could be given to you, and you'll need to you'll be asked to, provide your point of view. So, you'll be asked to take a stance, not just to discuss the advantages and disadvantages, but you'd also be asked, what is your opinion of this particular problem, and give us reasons why. So that's something that requires practice. I would highly recommend to go through formats of not just the letter, but also essays, how to structure an essay, what is the kind of English that you use. Your English may be excellent, but if you do not use an academic level of English or a semi-formal level of English, and you use very, very informal English, then that's something that you will be penalized for. Moving on to the speaking. Now, the speaking is everyone's favorite section, and the reason for that is because it's only 11 to 14 minutes in duration. You have three parts. So you have, part one is the easiest. You're going to be asked a range of familiar questions about yourself, about your family, about, your job, your favorite subject, maybe, hobbies. And then in Part two and part three are interrelated. So in part two, you'll be given a specific topic. You'll be asked to talk about it for 2 minutes, and you will be given 1 minute to prepare before that. And then in part three, you will be asked further questions regarding the topic in part two. And basically, you'll have to answer the questions of the examiner. You'll be given an opportunity to discuss it in more detail. Moving on, how can the British Council help you prepare? Now, the British Council as an organization works with a lot of partners. Now, one of the partners that we are doing this session for right now is Filipino Institute. What we would recommend is talk to them, discuss your needs. Each individual's needs are different. What kind of preparation material you require as an individual will vary. So you will need to consult one of their staff, discuss with them what are your needs, what is your level of, your existing level of English language proficiency, what is the score that you require. Of course, you're aiming for the maximum, remember that, but what is the minimum score you require, where are you at currently, and where do you wish to progress in terms of your language proficiency. And then, of course, the institute themselves will recommend to you what are the different types of options in terms of courses that they offer. You might have to take a generic English course. You might have to take a separate English, like for example, you have different types of courses like business English, you have professional English, professional skills. So it depends on your requirement. Even within IELTS, there are different levels of courses that are offered by the institute. So in terms of free preparation, now you can work with your trainer. You can work on a plan. You can use some of the free resources. You can use some of the paid resources. You can work around with the free resources with the trainer in the institute. So for example, as soon as you book your test, as soon as you have completed registration and payment, you get access to a virtual learning platform. Now, this is called the Road to IELTS learning platform. Of course, if you have a very high level of English and you have a very high level of self-motivation, then you can do it yourself. You can attempt the questions yourself and you can assess yourself. However, what is recommended is that you sit with your trainer, look at this material together, look at the different sample questions, attempt the practice tests. Yeah, that's most important. There's a lot of practice tests on the virtual learning platform, which we highly recommend that you do and time yourself on it and then seek feedback from the trainer on it. So especially with regards to writing pieces, that is something that you have to do with an experienced individual. So, try to look up different topics, write an essay, submit it, take a look, discuss the different areas where there is scope for improvement and accordingly improvise. Now, we also have a free mobile app, which you can see on the bottom left of my screen. That's the IELTS Prep app. That is something that you can download. Of course, it's available on the iStore, the Google Play Store as well. We have a free book that you can avail of. This is known as the IELTS Essential Guide for those of you, that like the touch and feel of paper. If you don't want to use the virtual platform, we have the free book that you can use. And then there are a lot of webinars that, and preparation material that can assist you. The more you attend, the better. Of course, there will be slight overlap in terms of certain aspects of the presentations, but each one is unique and each one helps you in terms of preparation. So these are some websites that you can refer to. There's a free familiarization test for the computer delivered IELTS that's available on our website. That's here. That's the link here. Just, so that you know what to expect on the test day in terms of user interface. There are practice tests which you can attempt. And that's it. More or less, the more you prepare, the better you are. And we're bang on time, 5:45. But before I take any questions, I'm going to keep this screen up for a while. If you're planning to book your test, please do so now. You can just scan the QR code below from your phone, book your test now. Of course, you can always contact us to, to get your free seat, which is the 3-hour workshop, the IELTS Ready workshop. It's not by default. If you book your test now, you need to send us an email with your IELTS reference number, with the location that you would like to attend the workshop in. We deliver these workshops in Dubai, in Sharjah, in Abu Dhabi, as well as in Alain. We have fixed dates for them. But of course, your registration has to be through the Filipino Institute. So please scan this QR code on screen and go ahead and book your test. I'm now going to take any questions. I cannot see the chat box as yet. Let me just open the chat box and have a look at any. Do we have any questions, Joel?
All right, the floor is now open for questions. If you have any questions about IELTS in general or the procedure, we are accepting them now. Gia, would you have any question?
No, sir.
What about you, Jen? Would you have any question? You can ask questions.
No,
Questions
sir.
are for free.
No question is silly, so please feel free to ask
Yes.
any question. Yeah.
Wilson, I think Wilson has a question. Wilson?
Yes, I have a question regarding
Yeah, please,
the
Wilson, go ahead.
regarding the computer-based exam.
Mhm.
The reading, writing, and the listening. Should we answer? We should put the answer capitalized, or like how we should put our answer. That's my
So that's
question.
that's a very good question. See, in the listening and reading, if I'm talking about the listening and reading, because those are where you are answering in one word or a few words, in that you can definitely capitalize all your answers if you're not sure whether or not it's a capital or a small. So for example, if you're writing the name of a place and you're not sure whether, the first letter should be capital or small, and you write everything in capitals, it's totally fine, it's acceptable, and that's what we recommend so that you get a good score and so that there's no ambiguity in terms of whether or not to capitalize or not. However, in the writing, of course, you cannot do this, because in the writing, you're writing an essay. So that is, of course, and in the speaking, it's not applicable. So I hope that answers your question. And when it comes to computer delivered, what I'd like to stress on, since you touched upon computer delivered, there are a lot of aspects of it that you need to be consciously aware of. For example, I'll give you one example. There is something known as a drag and drop question. Now, a lot of students don't know or are not aware that this is a type of question where the answer needs to be clicked on, dragged, and dropped into the, say, fill in the blank type of question. So you need to pick the word and drop it into the blank. And most of the candidates, they try to type it. So that's something, if I didn't tell you this information, you would lose out because you are stressed. You have that time, you have a time limit and you're unable to type, and you're like, what is wrong? Even if you ask the invigilator is not allowed to tell you. The invigilator will tell you, please read the question again, because the question will tell you drag and drop. Yeah. So these are tiny things that you need to be aware of in the computer delivered. But yes, you can definitely capitalize everything in the listening and the reading, in both paper-based and computer delivered. Any more questions? I hope that answers your question, Wilson.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. While you all think of any more questions, we still have about 10 minutes left. Just to remind you all that a lot of times I get the question during a Q&A session, which one should I take? Should I take computer delivered or paper based? Now, this depends on your level of comfort. We do not, push you to take any of the two. Yes, if you are on a budget and you're trying to save, paper based is slightly more reasonable. If you are looking at faster results, computer delivered is the one for you. If you're looking at flexibility with your work schedule, you're unable to take the test on a Saturday or Thursday, then you have to go for computer delivered because the rest of the days of the week are not available for paper-based. If you want to take your test during the evenings and not in the morning on a weekend, on a Saturday, then again, you have to consider computer delivered. But I personally would say computer delivered is the way forward because, most of us type faster than we write, we delete faster than we erase, correction of spellings and all is so much more easier on screen. There's no hassle to transfer your answers from the question paper to the answer sheet in the listening section, which is, a major issue, according to me, in the paper-based. So lots of benefits in taking the computer-delivered IELTS. I hope that helps. But yeah, if you're not comfortable using a computer or a keyboard or a mouse, if that makes you nervous, then definitely go for a paper-based because you want to give it your best shot. Any more questions? I can see Nathan, Wilson, Gia, Jen. Any more questions? Anything at all that comes to mind? As I said, this is the QR code. You can scan it. Once you book your test, send us an email if you'd like to attend our workshops, our free workshops. I guess there are no more questions. If no more questions, then back to you, Joel.
Yes, few more minutes. I think we still have 9 minutes. Karen,
Yeah.
can you say the difference and probably which one to take better, computer or paper-based exam?
So that's just what I explained actually. Let me try covering it again in a little more detail. I'm just wondering if I have that slide here, which may be hidden. Yes. So let me just unhide this.
The price is the same, right? If you are gonna take
No, the price is not the same. The price for a paper-based is 1170. The price for a computer delivered is 1290. This is, this was a slide that was hidden. I usually only, display it when somebody asks this
Ganyan.
question.
Yung name ng outlet,
Yeah,
tapos
I hope you can
certain
see this. These, what you can see check marked on my screen are the benefits of computer delivered IELTS. So yes, handwriting, most of us type faster than we write. So that's number one. That's a huge benefit for me personally. Number two is word count. Yes, this is something which I didn't mention when I was talking about it earlier. In the writing section, you have a word count that appears at the bottom of the screen in the computer delivered. This, of course, is not there in the paper-based. You have to manually count each word or, approximate how many words are in each line and then count the lines. So that is another huge benefit in the computer delivered IELTS. Highlighting in the reading section is possible in the CD IELTS or computer delivered IELTS. This is not possible in the paper-based version of the test because you are not permitted to take highlighters into the test room in a paper-based test. However, you can still underline with a pencil or a pen. Faster results, that's another huge benefit of the computer delivered IELTS. It's 3 to 5 days after your test that you get your results, whereas in paper-based IELTS, you have to wait for 13 days and then only will you get your result. Now, the most, I would say the deciding factor or the primary factor, which is, I wouldn't even say it's a benefit, but it is a deciding factor when you're deciding between paper-based and IELTS, a primary factor, and that is in terms of your availability. So if you are available on a Saturday morning or a Thursday morning at 8 a.m. all the way up till 1 p.m., then yes, go for a paper-based IELTS because the paper-based IELTS test dates are fixed. It's always fixed. It's usually by default on a Saturday, but once a month we have a Thursday session. It always starts in the morning. So even though your test starts at 9, you will be asked to report to the venue at 8 o'clock for registration process and the IAM verification process to be complete. However, if you want to do a CD IELTS test, you can do it any day of the week. You can do it, you have 3 options a day, AM, PM1 and PM2. So you can always choose to do it after work, maybe at 5 p.m., leave an hour early from work, go for the PM2 session. If you want to do it on a weekday, you can take off from work, prepare the whole morning, do your test in the evening. So it basically goes to offer you that flexibility and frequency in terms of test day. Now, and in terms of test time also. Now, if you like to still plan on paper, you can still do that because you get a login sheet with your login details for the computer delivered IELTS. So you can use that as a rough sheet. No one's going to look at it. It's going to be discarded after the test. You can use that as your rough sheet for, especially for planning your essays and stuff like that. So overall, it's the same speaking test. It's just more convenient. It's the same listening, reading, writing test also in terms of content. Everything is identical. It's just the user interface that varies. And of course, that, one key difference is you don't have to transfer your answers from the question paper to the answer sheet. Like, to make myself more clear, in the paper-based IELTS, at the end of the listening section, you have 10 minutes at the end to transfer your answers from your question paper to your answer sheet. Why? Because you have your earphones on and you are listening carefully and you're quickly jotting down the answers on your question paper. So you are given 10 minutes at the end to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. This is not there in the computer delivered IELTS because you're lucky you're answering everything live on screen. You can delete, you can edit everything on screen. So same results again, faster results, same results format, same content, greater flexibility, same preparation, easier booking process. All of that are the benefits of taking the computer delivered IELTS. But yes, for some of us who are not comfortable, you may not use a computer or a keyboard. You're not comfortable typing. You prefer the paper-based format because it reminds you of your school days maybe, and you're more comfortable with that format for examining or testing. Then you're more than welcome to book a paper-based test. Any more questions? Cannot see the chat box again. Yeah, there is no chat box in this, isn't there? Anyhow, are there any more questions? We have somebody who's joined, Evelyn, Jen, Bing, Gia, and there's a Samsung. Anybody who has any questions?
I think they would reserve their questions in the further because we do this every Friday. Probably we could do a little bit of training
Sure.
before the orientation. We'll be doing this every Friday, and that's so we can gather more participants as well. It'll be interactive. There will be more questions. But thank you so much, Karen, for joining us.
You're most welcome.
This video, this session is recorded. I'll be sending you a copy of this so we would have a reference. But we're all excited with the partnership that we are doing with British Council.
Great. So thank you very much and have a lovely weekend ahead.
Yes, it's holiday tomorrow. The school is closed actually. I don't know if I'm traveling outside Abu Dhabi. I might because on the 31st I'll be in Sharjah. We have a graduation there. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Karen. And everyone, thank you. We will be sending you links in the next session, upcoming sessions. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.